The coffee is too hot and I drink it anyway, because Julian is 40 seconds from walking into this room and I need something to do with my hands that isn't reaching for him. Mr. Castellane will be here shortly. I say to no one, to the empty boardroom, to the version of myself that still rehearses lines like that one even after 3 years of being the only person who knows exactly how long it takes him to find his cufflinks when he's nervous. He walks in wearing the Navy suit, the one I picked out, the one he held up that morning in our kitchen, and said this one, like my opinion on tailoring, was the only vote that mattered in the building. He doesn't look at me the way he looked at me an hour ago, over eggs, with his foot hooked around my ankle under the table. He looks at me the way a CEO looks at the person who organizes his calendar. Brisk, grateful, already moving past me toward the window. Theo, the Voss documents on your desk. My voice comes out exactly right. Flat, efficient. The register I've practiced longer than I've practiced anything else in my life. Also, your mother called twice. Something tightens at the corner of his jaw. Almost nothing. The kind of almost nothing. Only I would catch, because I've spent 3 years learning the weather of his face, the way other people learn a language. Twice, he repeats, and sits, and doesn't ask me what she wanted, which means he already knows, which means I'm about to find out the hard way. I find out 40 minutes later, when Margot Castellane walks into the boardroom without knocking, trailing the particular cold perfume she wears like armor, and says, in front of 6 board members and me, holding a coffee tray like a person whose job is to be furniture, Julian, the Voss family wants the engagement announced by the gala. 3 weeks. I've already told Helome. It's happening. Nobody looks at me. That's the thing about being introduced as the assistant for 3 years. You become a fixture, a chair, a competent piece of the room that nobody thinks is listening, even when you are the only person in it whose hands have gone cold around a coffee tray, even when you are the only person in it who, an hour ago, was laughing into this man's neck about something stupid the cat did. Julian doesn't look at me either. That's the part that lands like a struck bell, low and ringing, long after the sound should have stopped. We'll discuss it, he says to his mother in the voice he uses for boards and journalists, and now apparently for me, and I set the coffee tray down on the credenza with hands that do not shake because I've had 3 years of practice, and I leave the room before anyone can watch my face do something unprofessional. Here is what nobody tells you about loving someone in secret. The secrecy doesn't feel like shame in the big dramatic moments. It feels like shame in the small ones. The way I have to text him, Mr. Breck. Castellane, your 9 a.m. moved to 10 on a phone that, an hour earlier, received a photo of his bare feet on our balcony, with the caption, "Come back to bed." The way I keep a separate voice for the office. Lower and clipped, like a costume I put on with my tie. I didn't choose this life by accident. I took the assistant job 3 years ago because Julian needed someone he trusted completely, and because, and this is the part I don't say out loud even to Noor, I would have taken any job that put me in his orbit. We fell into each other slowly, the way 2 people do when one of them has too much to lose, and the other has decided he doesn't care what it costs. I knew what I was signing up for. I told myself the hiding was temporary, a season, a means to an end neither of us had named yet. 3 years is not a season. 3 years is a life I have built entirely out of side doors. Noor is on the couch when I get home, eating cereal for dinner, like a crime scene. And she takes one look at my face and says, "Who died?" Nobody died. There's an engagement. She sets the bowl down so fast milk sloshes onto the coffee table. His engagement? His mother's idea of his engagement? To Elodie Voss, for the merger. I sit down across from her because, if I sit next to her, I will lean into her shoulder, and I am not ready to be that soft yet. Not at 7 in the evening with my tie still on. 3 weeks, announced at the gala. And Julian said, we'll discuss it in the voice. Noor knows the voice. I've described it to her enough times. The boardroom register. Flat as a closed door. Then he didn't come find me after. He went into a 2-hour call with Adrienne instead. Theo. She says my name like it's the start of a longer sentence, and then doesn't finish it because she knows me well enough to know I'll flinch away from whatever comes next. Instead, she just reaches over and pulls my tie loose at the knot, an old habit of hers, something she's done since we were 22 and broke and sharing a studio apartment. Before any of this, before Julian, before the office, before 3 years of side doors. Eat something that isn't almond milk, and dignity. I laugh because it's funny, and because if I don't laugh, I'm going to think about the way Julian's jaw moved when his mother said, "I've already told Helone it's happening," and how he let her say it like a fact instead of a question. He comes to my apartment at 11, which he hasn't done in months. Usually it's me going to his penthouse, slipping into the garage. A whole choreography we built to keep the doorman from learning my face too well. But tonight he's standing in my hallway in the navy suit, with his tie gone, looking like a man who walked here instead of being driven, which he probably did because Julian Castellane thinking is a man who needs his legs moving. Say something, I tell him, because the silence has gone on 4 seconds too long and I can feel it turning into something I won't be able to take back. I'm not marrying Aigle de Vos. I know that. I do know that. I have never doubted that. Not in 3 years. Not even now. That's not what I'm asking. He runs a hand through his hair, and it's a small thing. A nothing thing. Except I know this gesture. It's the one he does when he's about to say something true that he wishes he didn't have to. The merger closes the day after the gala. My father spent 6 years building toward this. If the engagement falls through publicly, Voss walks, and 400 people lose their jobs over my mother's failure to control the narrative around her unmarried son. So you'll let her announce it. I'll let her think I'm letting her announce it. He says this like it's a plan, like it's a solution. And for 1 second, I almost believe him because I have spent 3 years training myself to believe him. I need 3 weeks, Theo. I need the appearance of it to hold until the ink dries, and then I'll handle my mother. And then what my voice does something I didn't authorize. Cracks. Just slightly on the what? 3 weeks ago, you told me you were thinking about telling her. About us. Now you're telling me to help you fake an engagement to someone else. I'm not asking you to help. You're asking me to watch. And that's worse. I realize saying it out loud. That's so much worse than being asked to help, because at least helping would mean I'm still inside the thing with him. Watching means I'm outside it. Holding his coat, the way I've always been positioned to be. The assistant in the room nobody looks at. I'm asking who's going to sit across from her at that gala while she announces it, Julian. Because it's not going to be the assistant. It's going to be me, the person who has been in your bed for 3 years, watching you let your mother hand you to someone else, like a quarterly report. He doesn't answer. The silence sits there between us, ordinary and enormous. The refrigerator humming in the kitchen, a car alarm 2 streets over insisting on its own emergency. And I think, this is the quietest I have ever heard a room get without anyone leaving it. I need you, he finally says, to help me plan the party. I laugh. It isn't a kind laugh. Of course you do. I say yes. I want to tell you I didn't, that I had some dignity reserve I drew on. But the truth is, I've spent 3 years saying yes to smaller indignities than this one. And by the time you've said yes to enough small ones, the big one doesn't feel like a different category. It feels like the same muscle, just flexed harder. So I plan the party. I am, after all, very good at my job. I am also, it turns out, the only person standing in the room when Elodie Voss walks in for the first time, 3 days later, to discuss seating charts with a man she's about to be engaged to and has met exactly twice. She's not what I expected. I expected someone cold, bred for this. A woman who'd treat the whole arrangement like a merger because in every sense that matters, it is one. Instead, she sits down across from Julian in the small conference room, glances at me, at the assistant taking notes invisible, and says, conversationally, like we're old friends, "You're the one who actually runs his calendar, right?" Theo, that's me. Good. You're the only person in this building who looks like he hasn't been lying to me for a week. She turns to Julian, without missing a beat. I know this isn't real. I assume you know I know. Julian's pen stops moving. Elodie. My father needs this merger as badly as yours does. I need my father to stop trying to marry me off to men who actually want it. Which, no offense, you very much do not. She says this lightly, but there's an edge under it, something tired and resigned that I recognize because I wear a version of it every day. I'll wear the ring. I'll smile at the gala. What I won't do is pretend I don't see what's happening here. Her eyes flick to me again, just for a second, just long enough. I feel my pulse in my throat. I should give you two privacy. Stay, she says not unkindly. You're the one who's actually losing something. You should at least get to hear the terms. Julian looks at me like he's been caught at something which he has. And for the first time since his mother walked into that boardroom, he says my name in front of someone who is a newer or a closed door, Theo. Just that. An apology folded into two syllables. I don't answer him. I look at Elodie instead, because she at least has been honest with me in the first 5 minutes I've known her, which is more than I can say for 3 years of side doors. What are the terms? I ask her. The terms, as it turns out, are simple and humiliating, in equal measure. A public engagement, 6 months minimum, broken off quietly after the merger has had time to settle, framed as a mutual and amicable parting. Elodie wants to go back to Geneva, to a life her father doesn't get a vote in. Julian wants 400 jobs intact, and his father's company solvent between the two of them. They built a tidy little arrangement that cost neither of them anything they were planning to keep. It cost me the only thing I have that isn't a job title. 6 months, I say to Julian that night, in his kitchen, the one place in the city where I'm allowed to exist as something other than an assistant, though tonight it doesn't feel like that kind of room. You're asking me to watch you be photographed with someone else's hand on your arm for 6 months. It's not real. It doesn't have to be real for it to be real to everyone who isn't us. I think of the headlines that are already drafting themselves in some publicist's head. Castellane air settles down, a phrase that will exist in the world describing him and a woman who is not me, forever sociable, permanent, while I exist nowhere in his story at all, not even as a footnote, not even as the assistant, because assistants don't appear in engagement photos. Do you understand what you're asking? You're asking me to become invisible on purpose. I've been invisible by accident for 3 years. This is different, I know. He says it quietly, and for once the boardroom register has gone completely. And what's underneath it is something rawer, something that sounds almost like fear, which is not a sound I associate with Julian Castellane, who has never once in 3 years let me seem afraid. I know what I'm asking. I don't have a better plan, Theo. I spent 4 days trying to find one. Then tell your mother no, and lose the merger. Lose my father's company. Lose 400. Don't, I say sharper than I mean to. Don't do the math with me. I know the math. I've known the math since the day I took this job. I'm not asking you to choose 400 strangers over me. I'm asking you to find one version of this that doesn't require erasing me to save them. He doesn't have an answer. I watch him not have one. Watch the silence stretch out across his kitchen island. The one we picked the marble for together. The one that has hosted 3 years of 2 in-the-morning conversations that built something I genuinely believed was permanent. I love you, he says finally. Like it's an answer, though it isn't one, not to the question I actually asked. I know, I say, and I mean it. And it still isn't enough tonight. And I go home alone for the first time in longer than I want to count. Noor finds me on the balcony at 1 in the morning, wrapped in the blanket that lives there permanently now, because apparently I am a person who sits on balconies at 1 in the morning these days. You're doing the thing, she says, sitting down next to me, stealing half the blanket without asking, the way she's done since we were 22. What thing? The thing where you decide the only options are disappear quietly or blow everything up, and you don't notice there's a door marked neither. Sitting right there the whole time. I look at her. The city does its city thing below us. Lit windows, and a siren somewhere distant, and the particular hush of a Tuesday night that has nothing left to prove. What's the door, then? I don't know yet. But you spent 3 years being so good at staying small that I don't think you remember you're allowed to ask for the version where you're not. She pulls her knees up, considers the skyline like it owes her something. Can I tell you something selfish? Always. I've been in love with someone unavailable for 2 years. Different shape, same problem. I keep thinking if I'm patient enough, good enough, quiet enough about it, eventually the unavailable part will just wear off like a coat someone forgot to take off. She laughs, short and not entirely amused. It doesn't wear off, Theo. It has to be taken off on purpose by them. I think about Adrian because of course it's Adrian. It's been Adrian since the office holiday party 2 years ago, though Noor's never said his name out loud to me, not once. And I've let her keep that privacy because I understand exactly what it costs to keep one. You think Julian needs to take the coat off on purpose? I think you've been waiting 3 years for him to do something he's never had to do, because you kept doing it for him. You disappeared so well, he never had to learn how to keep you visible. She bumps my shoulder with hers, gently, the way you'd nudge someone awake without startling them. That's not a flaw in you. It's not sustainable. You can't out-disappear a problem forever. I don't sleep that night. I lie there turning her sentence over like a stone in my pocket. He never had to learn how to keep you visible. Until somewhere around 4 in the morning, it stops, sounding like an accusation, and starts sounding like the only useful thing anyone has said to me in a week. Adrien Lessard finds me in the break room 2 days later, which never happens, because Adrien doesn't drink the break room coffee. And Adrien doesn't talk to assistants, unless he needs something printed. You should take some time off, he says, not looking at me very interested in the coffee machine. Use the PTO you've apparently never touched in 3 years. Family emergency, whatever you need to call it. Excuse me. The gala is in 12 days. The last thing this merger needs is... He stops, chooses his next words with the care of a man diffusing something. Complications. Visible ones. You've been very good at not being a complication for 3 years, Theo. I'm asking you to keep being good at it for 12 more days. I set my mug down harder than I mean to. Did Julian send you to say this? Julian doesn't know I'm saying it. And there it is. The thing that makes Adrien dangerous, the thing that makes him exactly the kind of obstacle the conflict engine needs. Because he's not cruel, he's not even wrong. He's just a man who has spent 15 years protecting his best friend from every cost of being who he is. And he has decided without asking anyone. That I am the cost this time. I've watched Julian build this company back from what his father almost lost it to. I've watched what it costs him every single day to keep the Voss family from smelling weakness. I like you, I do. But I will not watch 12 days of careful work fall apart because you couldn't manage to be invisible for less than 2 weeks. I have been invisible for 3 years, Adrien. My voice is very quiet and very even, and I am proud of it even as my hands go cold around the mug. I think I've more than proven I can manage it. He has the decency to look uncomfortable at that, just for a second. Then it's gone, replaced by the boardroom face, the one I recognize because Julian wears it too, the family uniform. 12 days, he says again, and leaves and doesn't look back. And I stand in the break room a long time, thinking about Noor's coat that never wears off on its own. The gala invitations go out. My name is not on any of them. Obviously, because my name has never been on anything that mattered in this building, except the internal directory, where I am listed. With brutal administrative honesty, as Marchetti, T, executive assistant to J, Castellane, Julian asks me to help him pick the ring. I don't know what I expected, some grand gesture of guilt, some tortured speech. But instead it's just a Tuesday, and he slides a velvet box across his desk to me after hours, like he's asking my opinion on a tie and says, "Tell me if this looks like something Elodie would actually wear, or if it looks like something my mother would pick for a stranger." I open the box. It's tasteful, expensive, completely without personality. Exactly the kind of ring you'd choose for someone you'd never really looked at. It looks like a Margot ring, I tell him. That's what I thought. He closes the box, sets it aside, and for a moment neither of us says anything, and the office goes very quiet around us. The particular hush of a building, after 6 o'clock, when everyone reasonable has gone home, and only the two of us remain, doing whatever this is. Theo. He says my name like he's testing whether it still works between us. I talked to my mother today. Something in my chest goes very still and very hopeful, which I know better than to trust. 3 years of practice should have taught me better than to trust it. And I told her 6 months is the absolute ceiling. I told her the second the merger paperwork is signed, the engagement ends, and I'm not negotiating that point again. He looks at me, finally, really looks, the way he used to before all of this started eating the space between us. It's not what you asked for. I know it's not. But it's the truest thing I can give you right now, and I wanted you to know I fought for it. It's not enough. I know, even as something in me softens toward him despite every instinct telling me not to, that 6 months of erasure with a deadline attached is still 6 months of erasure. But it's also the first time in 2 weeks he's chosen a fight that costs him something, instead of asking me to be the only one who pays, and I find I don't have it in me to refuse that small, real thing. Okay, I say. Okay. 12 days, then 6 months. Then, I can't finish the sentence. I don't know what's on the other side of the then, neither, I suspect. Does he? But for the first time since his mother walked into that boardroom, the silence between us feels like something we're standing in together, instead of something he's standing on the other side of. The false calm lasts 5 days, which is longer than I expected, and shorter than I needed. It happens like this. A photographer catches Jillian leaving my building at 11 at night, 3 days before the gala, because apparently even side doors and garage entrances run out of luck eventually. The photo isn't damning on its own. A man visiting his assistant. Nothing illegal about that, except the photographer also catches the look on Julian's face as he glances back up at my window before he gets in the car. And that look is not the look of a man visiting his assistant. That look is the look of a man leaving someone he loves. It runs in a gossip column 2 days later, with the headline Castellane's late night visits. Who's really waiting at home? Margot calls an emergency meeting at 7 in the morning. I am, as always, in the room, holding a coffee tray, furniture that happens to also be the subject of the meeting, though no one says my name out loud for the first 20 minutes. It's nothing, Julian says. Theo and I work late. I drop by to discuss the next day's schedule. There's nothing in that photo. There is everything in that photo, Margot says. And for the first time since I've known her, she sounds less like a woman managing a brand, and more like a mother who has just understood something about her son that she has spent years successfully not understanding. She looks at me. Actually at me. The first time in 3 years she has looked at me like I am a person and not a piece of office equipment, and something complicated moves across her face. Not kindness exactly. Recognition, maybe. How long, she says to Julian, though her eyes stay on me. Mother, how long? Julian, 3 years. He says it like a confession in church, low and final. And I feel the whole room go very still around the word. The board members suddenly extremely interested in their own hands. 3 years! And I'm not discussing it further in front of the board. Adrienne's jaw is tight. Claudie, who is somehow also in this meeting, looks at me with something that might almost be sympathy. And Margot. Margot just nods, once slowly, like a woman recalculating a sum she's been getting wrong for a very long time. The gala is in 3 days, she says, finally to the room. We proceed as planned. We will discuss the rest of this. Her eyes flick to Julian. As a family, privately, it looks for one suspended moment like the worst has already happened, and somehow survived itself. It looks like relief. It is, I will learn in 48 hours, the false resolution. The moment that looks like the ending, right before the floor opens up underneath it. The floor opens up like this. Margot comes to my apartment alone. the night before the gala, without calling first, wearing the kind of coat that costs more than I make in 2 months, and she sits down across from me at my own kitchen table, like she has every right to be there. "I'm not here to threaten you," she says, before I can say anything at all. "I want to be clear about that, because I imagine that's what you're expecting." I wasn't expecting anything. I've stopped being able to predict this family this week. A small, humorless laugh. "Fair." She looks around my apartment. Small, lived in, nothing like the penthouse, nothing like the world her son moves through, and something in her expression shifts, almost involuntary. "My husband had someone too. Did you know that? Before Julian was born. A man. In a city. He thought I'd never visit. I found out, and I made him choose. And he chose the company. And I've spent 30 years married to a man who chose correctly, and lost something I don't think he's ever stopped grieving. I don't say anything. I don't know what to say to that. I am not going to make my son choose," she says, and her voice cracks, just slightly. "I'm my son." The first unguarded sound I have ever heard come out of her. "I have spent 3 years not seeing you, Theo, because it was easier than seeing what it meant. I am ashamed of that. I am telling you that once. And I will not say it again because I don't know how to be a different kind of person than the one I've been for 60 years. But I am not going to watch him build the life I built. I would rather lose the merger than do that to him twice." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the engagement ends tomorrow night at the gala, in front of everyone who needs to see it end, instead of 6 months from now in private where no one has to feel anything about it." She stands, smooths her coat, already retreating back into the version of herself the world recognizes. "I'm saying my son is about to do something reckless tomorrow night, and I came here to tell you before it happens, so that, whatever you decide to do about it, you're not blindsided the way I was." She leaves before I can ask what reckless means. I sit at my kitchen table for a long time afterward, the coffee gone cold in front of me, and I think, tomorrow, everything either ends or actually, finally, begins. The gala is held in a ballroom with the ceiling tall enough to swallow sound, chandeliers throwing gold light across 400 people who have no idea that the man at the center of the room has been planning for reasons I do not yet know to set fire to the careful arrangement that's kept this whole night standing. I'm not supposed to be a guest. I'm supposed to be working the room's edges, the assistant refilling glasses of small talk, making sure the schedule holds. I wear the suit Julian picked for me once, months ago, half joking, for when you finally come to one of these as yourself, and I never thought I'd actually wear it, and tonight watching Elodie Voss link her arm through Julian's at the top of the staircase under that impossible chandelier, I almost don't. I wear it anyway. Margot finds me near the bar, the only person in the room who knows what I'm bracing for. And she doesn't say anything, just stands beside me, an unlikely ally in a black dress. Both of us watching her son climb the stairs toward a microphone. He isn't supposed to need yet. He's supposed to make a toast, a safe one, written by the publicist, 3 sentences about gratitude and partnership and the future of Castellane and Frey. He gets through the first sentence. Then he stops. The room doesn't notice the stop at first. 400 people, mid-conversation, glasses, mid-air. But I notice it because I've spent 3 years learning the exact weight of Julian's silences, and this one is the heaviest I've ever felt. "I'm going to do something my mother specifically advised me not to do," he says, and the room does notice that. Conversation dying in patches across the ballroom, like a hell breath spreading outward. I'm going to tell the truth because I've discovered this week that I am extremely bad at doing anything else convincingly, and because someone I love very much has spent 3 years being braver about the cost of honesty than I have. OAG beside him takes one calm step back, like she's been waiting for exactly this, and is relieved it's finally arriving. Elodie Voss is one of the best people I know, and she is not and has never been. "Who I'm in love with," Julian says, and his eyes find mine across the ballroom, across 400 strangers and 1 chandelier and 3 years of side doors. I'm in love with Theo Marchetti, who everyone in this room has met at least once and probably called the assistant, because that's the only word I ever let any of you use for him, and I am done. I am done letting that be the word. The silence that follows is the loudest thing I have ever stood inside. I don't move. I think, for one absurd second, that I might actually be furniture after all. That I might simply stay rooted by the bar forever, while 400 people decide what to do with what they just heard. Somewhere near the front, a camera flash goes off, and I think, there it is, the headline writing itself. Except this time it is my actual name in it. Adrien is the one who moves first. He crosses the ballroom floor in long, furious strides, and I brace for the scene I assumed he'd been protecting Julian from for 15 years. Except when he reaches the staircase, he doesn't reach for Julian. He turns instead to the room, to the murmuring crowd, to the Voss family standing frozen near the front with expressions I can't read yet, and he says, loud enough to carry, "The merger terms were never contingent on Julian's marital status." That was a narrative his mother's PR team invented 18 months ago, and frankly a stupid one. The Voss Group is investing in a company, not a wedding announcement. He looks at Elodie's father, who has the particular stillness of a man recalculating very quickly in public. "Isn't that right, Mr. Voss?" A long, terrible pause. Then, "The numbers were always the numbers," Voss says gruffly. Clearly displeased to be involved in whatever this is, but not, I notice, walking toward the exit. I don't care who my daughter's seatmate is at dinner as long as the holds. So Lady laughs, actually laughs bright and real, the first unguarded sound I've heard from her, and lifts her champagne glass slightly toward me, the smallest possible toast. "Thank God," she says to no one and everyone. I was so tired of pretending to be charmed. I don't remember crossing the ballroom floor. I remember Julian coming down the last few stairs to meet me halfway, and I remember Margot, somewhere behind him, not stopping him this time. And I remember the chandelier light catching on his face the way it used to catch on it in our kitchen at 6 in the morning. Ordinary and unbearable. That was reckless, I tell him, because someone has to say it, and because my voice is the only steady thing I have left to offer. I know. He's not smiling. Not exactly. He looks like a man who just walked off a cliff and is only now discovering whether there's ground underneath. Adrienne's going to bill me for emotional damages for the rest of my life? Probably. I think of the break room 12 days ago. I will not watch 12 days of careful work fall apart. And I understand, finally, that Adrienne wasn't protecting the merger from me. He was protecting Julian from a version of himself that never had to risk anything. And somewhere in the last 12 days, he decided that version had cost enough. Why now? Why tonight? In front of everyone, instead of telling me first? Because if I told you first, you'd have talked me out of it. You'd have done the math again. You always do the math first, and the wanting second. And I needed just this once for both of us to do the wanting first, and let the math catch up. He reaches up finally in front of 400 witnesses and one furious-looking publicist already drafting a statement somewhere near the coat check, and straightens my collar, a gesture so small, so domestic, that it undoes me more completely than the speech did. I'm sorry it took 3 years in a chandelier for me to learn how to keep you visible. The aftermath takes longer than the speech did, the way these things always do. Real life doesn't end on a chandelier. It ends in a series of smaller, less photogenic rooms. There's a statement eventually drafted by a publicist who looks like she hasn't slept since the gala. The engagement was called off by mutual decision. The Voss-Castellane merger proceeds as planned. No further comment. There's a board meeting where 2 members quietly resign, citing nothing in particular, and 4 others stay. Because Adrienne was right. The ebbiday was always the ebbiday. There's a long, difficult dinner with Margot where almost nothing is said out loud, and everything is understood anyway. The 2 of us sitting at either end of a table too big for 3 people. Learning the strange new shape of being, however, reluctantly. Almost something like family, and there's the directory. 3 weeks after the gala, I open the internal system, out of habit, The way you check a wound to see if it's healing, and find that someone, I'll never get Julian to admit it was him, though I know it was him, has updated my listing. Not Marchetti, T. Quite. Executive Assistant to J. Castellane. Just my name, my title, my own line in the company's architecture. No longer filed under anyone else's. It isn't a grand gesture. It's smaller than the ballroom, smaller than the speech. But I think about what Noor said on the balcony about coats that don't wear off on their own. And I understand that this is what it looks like when someone finally, deliberately, takes one off. Noor gets her own ending, the way she deserves to, though it takes Adrian considerably longer to arrive at his senses than it took Julian. It happens at the office holiday party, almost a year to the day since the one when Noor first noticed him without telling me his name. And this time I'm there as a guest, not staff, which still feels like trying on a coat that doesn't quite fit yet. Warm in a way I'm still getting used to. Adrian, stiff and overdressed as always, spends 40 minutes failing to ask Noor to dance, in increasingly elaborate ways, until she finally takes his drink out of his hand, sets it down, and says, "You've rehearsed 3 different sentences in the last 10 minutes. Just say the real one." He looks for a second exactly like a man who spent 15 years building careful arguments for other people's emotional lives, and never once practiced one for his own. I don't actually know how to do this part. I know. I've been waiting 2 years for you to figure it out anyway. She holds out her hand, not unkindly. The same gesture she's used on me 100 times across 100 bad nights. Dance with me badly. We'll learn the rest as we go. I watch them from across the room, Julian's hand warm at the small of my back. No longer a thing either of us has to hide, no longer a side door or a borrowed name on a calendar. And I think about how the conflict engine of someone else's heart can run alongside your own the whole time, unnoticed, until it finally, quietly, resolves itself too. A year after the gala, Julian proposes, for real this time. No velvet box chosen to please anyone's mother, no publicist drafting the announcement in advance. He does it in our kitchen, the one with the marble we picked together on an ordinary Tuesday morning, with eggs going cold on the stove, which is, I will later realize, exactly the kind of ending the story was always building toward. Not a chandelier, not 400 witnesses, just the 2 of us in the room where we actually live. "I have a question," he says, and his hands are doing the thing they do when he's nervous, patting his pockets for cufflinks that aren't there. Because it's a Tuesday. Because we're not at the office. Because for the first time in 3 years, his nervous habit has nowhere useful to land. "You're patting your pockets for cufflinks," I tell him, "and you're not wearing a shirt that has any." I know. He laughs, short and helpless. And for a second, he is exactly the man I fell in love with 3 years ago across a boardroom table. Neither of us were allowed to acknowledge. Except now there's nothing underneath the laugh that he's hiding from me. I had a whole speech. I lost it somewhere between the eggs. And this moment, tell me the real one instead. He does. It isn't long, and it isn't polished, and it doesn't have a single board member or chandelier in it. He tells me that he spent 3 years calling me his assistant in rooms where the word cost him nothing and me everything, and that he intends to spend the rest of his life calling me by the one word that's true. In every room. Starting with this kitchen and ending nowhere because there's no ending to a word like that. Only the next room it gets set in. I say yes before he finishes the sentence, which makes him laugh again, and he reaches over, out of habit, out of 3 years of memorizing the small details of me the way I memorized the weather of his face, and straightens my collar, the same gesture from the staircase, from the ballroom, from the very first morning he tried on the navy suit, and asked this one. Like my opinion was the only vote that mattered. This one, I tell him, echoing it back, and he understands exactly what I mean. Because he's spent a year finally learning how to listen for the things underneath the things I say. This one, he agrees, and kisses me, and somewhere on the stove the eggs go from cold to ruined, and neither of us moves to save them, because, for the first time in 3 years, there is nothing in the world more urgent than this room, this name, this kitchen, ours,